What can you expect from Connect 2025? Connect is an event that redefines what's possible in pharmacy. Join the RedSail family all in one place. Learn directly from product experts with classes tailored to getting the most out of your RedSail solution. Pioneer RX, Best RX, NRX, Prime Care, DocuTrack, Delivery Track, and Access LTC. Connect with fellow professionals and RedSail team members during roundtables, collaborative sessions, and customer panels. Want to experience all that Connect 2025 has to offer? Register now at connectpharmacyconference.com.
Hey, welcome to a special edition of Catalyst Podcast. We are here live at the NCPA annual convention. So we're here with Doug, and welcome.
Hey.
I think it's your third podcast now.
I've lost count. It's the third or fourth
All right.
on Catalyst.
Well, cool. What's going on with NCPA this week?
Well, this is our annual meeting week, so it's a busy week for our team, but also busy for a lot of people in the industry. So we're going to have a couple thousand people here. We're in Columbus this year, and we've had a good meeting. We're in the exhibit hall now. There's over 200 exhibitors that independent pharmacy owners are going checking out, seeing how they can help their business, including RedSail Pioneer. And we've had some great speakers, some great programming, things on like 340B and cash, should I do a cash pharmacy model or should I not? Cybersecurity, list goes on and on and on.
All small events that happened this year, stuff like that.
Yeah, just minor things that barely had any impact on independent pharmacy.
So I've been saving this. I almost sent you an email earlier the week to prep you, but I decided against it. So the last couple years, NCPA has been great about lobbying and telling everybody that'll listen that independent pharmacies not getting profit margin. The PBMs are really doing some dirty work. And PCMA kind of kept hitting back and saying, oh yeah, they're just a lobbying group. Independent pharmacies aren't viable businesses. They charge higher prices, all that stuff. And then Walgreens announces they're closing 15% of their stores. So you end up in this place now where the enemy of our enemy is kind of our friend, and Walgreens flagging that this model is true. How do you see that playing out for the independents and pharmacy in general?
Well, on kind of the second part, as far as like the closures, and so overall the number of closures in the country is, the number of pharmacies is down about 10%. So the peak of the number of pharmacies in the country was about 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. Right. And it's from that peak, the country is down about 10%. Many of those are chains and some of those are independents too.
Right.
And now with Walgreens announcing the closing of 1,200 pharmacies, I see that many patients are going to be in a lurch. They're going to no longer have a pharmacy, whether it's Walgreens or someone else, one of the other 6,000 pharmacies that have contracted in the market. They're going to be needing to find another pharmacy. There's also, I'm told from my members, some of the contracts from PBMs are, I know how, I've been told and am aware how egregious they are, but they are so egregious that we're hearing from pharmacies say, I just can't take that contract. And I think that's going to hit at the first of the year, and there's going to be a lot of patients who are going to be without a pharmacy. And if they try to go to one of the remaining big publicly traded chain pharmacies, which are already overloaded, which are already not able to handle the volume they currently have, those patients are going to, I'm afraid, go at least days without being able to get their medicine. I hope that those patients just make an incredible stink about it. I hope they talk to their employer. I hope they call 1-800-MEDICARE and say, I can't get a pharmacy, or the pharmacy I have is inadequate. Because this falls at CMS's feet. CMS has refused to get involved, and so they're driving the car off the cliff, and I hope patients don't get hurt, but I'm afraid that there's going to be many patients who are going to be left in a lurch, like I said, because of, they're just not going to be able to find a pharmacy.
Right. But and we know that those 1,200 pharmacies are probably going to disproportionately be in places that are more rural, poorer areas, the ones that are unprofitable. So you're like, pharmacy deserts and all of those things. So do you think that helps even with like some of the legislative actions that NCPA has taken, that now you have an even more evidence and credibility that says, like, it's not just independence. Like, if you don't own a PBM, you just can't make it in this business. You have to change something.
Yeah, I think it does help. I mean, it's a point we've been making for at least a couple of years. Not only because Walgreens have been closing, CVS announced that they're closing 10% of their stores a few years back. So, and I'm not a registered lobbyist. We have 5 on our staff who are. We have outside outside lobbying firms. But I do, on occasion, talk to legislators and certainly to the media quite a bit. And one of the points I've made to them for a number of years is that this isn't a little guy problem.
Right.
It's not because, supposedly the little guy can't compete, or that we're, some antique from the old days. Right. That's not the problem. And I pointed to Walgreens stock performance, which has been lagging for years, and it's fallen even more. I point to CVS closing 10% of their stores. But now with Walgreens being even more overt about their financial problems and closing 1,200 stores and just the contraction in the marketplace. I mean, you've got Publix, for example. I mean, I think that was 400 stores when they sold their, when that grocery store chain sold to someone else, they didn't keep those pharmacies open. So there's 400 pharmacies right there. And I do think it helps to say that this is a bigger problem, and it's not just a little guy problem.
That was initially when I saw that, I was like, oh no. And then I was like, well, this is actually a potentially positive thing eventually. It's going to be rough in the 2 years that it takes to close those out and transition. But it kind of tells you that there's a fundamental systemic problem, it's not an independent problem. It's a problem with the way that pharmacies modeled and the general structure of how we pay for drugs.
It's a problem with the pharmacy payment model. I mean, I'm sure, and I've on the podcast before, changing the pharmacy payment model. That's what it all goes back to. Because even, pharmacists need to perform at the top of our license. We want to be able to fill primary care gaps. But if we're not paid for our services and paid fairly for the dispensing of the product, we can't do any of those things. Right. So it goes back to changing the pharmacy payment model, pay us for our services, pay us fairly for the dispensing. And when you do that, you're going to lower overall healthcare costs, community's going to be healthier, consumers are going to be happier, and if it's done right, it's going to save money for the entire healthcare system and taxpayers, which you and me, in addition to being pharmacists, are taxpayers.
We get to be that
well.
too, yeah. All right, so let's pivot a little bit off of doom and gloom. You've been here. I've heard a bunch of really smart people say some really cool stuff. Pennsylvania, Arizona, Idaho all have expanded pharmacy services. The next 2 years, we make it through this. What are you hopeful? What are you optimistic for?
Yeah, when we make it through this, I am hopeful for stability in the dispensing, on the dispensing side. Stability, predictability. I talk to my members, and it's a roller coaster ride in the pharmacy. I mean, so lost on this one, lost on this one, lost on this one. Okay, maybe I made some money on this one, but that doesn't make up. You don't remember that when you're trying to get to sleep at night. You don't remember the one that you might have made some money on. You're thinking about the 19 that you got hammered on. We are promoting NADAC Plus in Medicaid. We're actually promoting that in Medicare as well.
Sure.
But on the Medicaid side, we're lobbying for federal legislation that would require Medicaid plans to pay NADAC plus a dispensing fee, which would be decided by the state.
Okay.
What is that dispensing fee? Well, there's been about 10 to 14 states that have passed this legislation, and the dispensing fee has typically been about $9.50 to $11.50, somewhere in that range. It varies from state to state. And when I talk to pharmacies in those states, they're pretty satisfied.
Right.
Like it's not like a license to print money. It's not that. but it is it gives them stability and transparency, and they know when they do that Medicaid claim, they're not going to get paid 39 cents, which doesn't even cover the vial and the label.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to a couple of people, and it helps. Like, I was at the CPSN reception last night and the Flip the Pharmacy one just before that. You've got a lot of people in there that are really optimistic about, adding clinical services and all of those things. And one thing that I think is smart that none of them said is we want to get away from dispensing drugs. They don't want that, right? Like, you want to be able to have a baseline of drugs that you can dispense and not lose money on, and be able to make a living on that, and then build your margin off of adding value for other types of services. And I like that world, right? That seems like a world that, people want to go to a pharmacy where they get the medication they need, they get the services they want, they get services they need but didn't know they wanted. And, if you can do that effectively, you have the right place to go, and you have a way to lower total healthcare costs. And those people aren't going to hospitals or health systems to get those services. Do you see any, how do you speed that up, right? How do we get from today to 2 years from now, when that's a reality for more than just a handful of states doing kind of progressive policies in how you practice pharmacy?
Yeah. Well, I agree completely. I mean, medicine as pharmacists, that is part of our identity. We also can and do provide primary care services, and we should do more of those. I get concerned whenever, and I don't hear it very often, but maybe someone in an ivory tower saying, oh, we shouldn't touch the medicine. I get concerned about that. I think maybe that person should become an NP, a PA, or a different. Our identity is the medicine. We need to keep that and provide the primary care services. So the stability from being paid fairly for the medicines provides that foundation. On the services side, how can we accelerate it? We need payment for those services. It is happening. You mentioned CPSN, and those contracts are coming. And some states more than others, the states where the networks are pretty well organized, those seem to be happening faster, and when they're very well organized. Some of it's changing a model that's been in place for decade, 50 years, where the pharmacist dispenses medicine and the nurses and the doctors do the services. It's turning the Titanic kind of thing, but I think that Titanic is in process. The way to change it fastest for the pharmacists, the pharmacies, is to get paid for the services and to have it in workflow, which where a company like yours can really be helpful. I mean, in COVID, I think there were 3 secret ingredients that made that successful.
Right.
One of them, there was scale. There were enough patients that pharmacy said, yeah, I've got 40 patients that I could give a COVID immunization to. I've got scale here and demand. The second would be appropriate payment. Hey, $40 for an immunization, that's fair. I'm willing to do it. So I've got scale, I've got fair payment, and the third, and this is where your company is so important, is workflow. It's got to be in the workflow, because if I have to get out of workflow from my dispensing process, then it's almost like opening a second company and needing a second staff and having to train a second staff. You have those 3 ingredients, and I think we can have we pharmacists can have an enormous impact on healthcare, lowering healthcare costs, improving healthcare, and also getting paid fairly for these services that we provide.
Got it. Yeah, the workflow part's crazy. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago with it was a Francisco Partners company, so the private equity group that owns us, and we were talking. There was a doctor there, and he's a high-end urologist in Southern California, and he was talking about breaking down his day into chunks of time of how much time he spent doing administrative things, documentation of things, and then how much time he actually spent talking to his patients. And it was shocking to see that he was spending 8 minutes with a patient. These are urology patients who are often cancer patients, right? 8 minutes. This is what you get with the guy who's going to keep you alive. And you have all this other stuff. So they're working on ways to refine those workflows. And it resonated with us as We had to do that with vaccines. You had to make them super, super fast. The same thing with care plans. You had to make them fast and efficient, and not just the word like the one specialist can do it, right? You had to be able to do it in workflow while you were able to dispense and talk to the patient and answer the phones and things like that. So, that I agree where you have like the other two are kind of fundamental pieces, and then the workflow part is how you make it accessible to everyone as well.
Right. And part of that workflow is your pharmacy team being able to do it, because the owner just can't do everything. And he or she often tries that. And that's one thing we invite people to come to this meeting, to our annual meeting, is to bring some of their team members. Because when they go back, when it's the owner only, he or she goes back, has all these great ideas, and the team is like looking at him like he's got three heads, because, hey, we're busy doing the job we had before you left for this meeting. So we encourage people to bring team members so they can help share the vision back with the rest of the team.
Yeah, I love that. I talked to a young pharmacist yesterday who's working at a store who has our software now, but was a resident at Purdue last year. And she was like, how do I, we're trying to do perpetual inventory. How do I do that? It's like, you have to get everybody in the store to buy in, right? Like we always see that, right? The owner gets excited, or one person gets excited, and it fails. And that's where you have to get everybody in the whole place bought into, this is the thing we're going to go on. And whether it's something as unsexy as inventory or as cool as new payment models, it's never going to work if you have one pharmacist or one owner excited about it. You need the super tech, you need the 25-year vet in your store who's cranky about change in general. You got to, how do you convince those people to do those things and come along with you? Or how do you get new people on board to come along with you, right? And there's some of that cultural shift of how do you do that quickly and efficiently in pharmacy? And I think the answer to that has come to NCPA and conventions where you've got smart people making those, like, we did something weird and different and it worked amazingly well. And just the kind of meeting of ideas is the value I get.
Yeah, you're right. Here. I mean, so we have the formal educational programs, and by formal, they're almost all peer taught. Like I think 75-80% of them are taught by pharmacy owners who have actually done it or are doing it. And the other thing that you just touched on was being able to have a hallway conversation with someone from your state, outside of your state, who has done something similar to what you're thinking about.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like when you talk to somebody, especially in this hall or in one of the classes, somebody tells you something, and at first your brain's like, well, that's weird, that's wrong. And you're like, that's usually the first step to finding out that that's maybe something you should be doing, right? It kind of resonates in a way that, like, when you play the wrong chord on a piano and you hear it and you're like, I don't know. And then you hear somebody tell you an idea of something they did and you're like, should I have been thinking about that differently?
Yeah.
Right. And it gives you a whole bunch of different perspectives on, can you do it? Sometimes the people who are the most successful were the ones that were, like, we kind of joke about it, calling them like too stupid to fail. Like they didn't know they couldn't do it, so they just went and did it. And you see a lot of that at places like this, and it's always fun to, like, if you leave a conference like NCPA and you're not pumped about it, I don't know what you did while you were here.
Well, we try to, people will get pumped up to their own degree, but I think most people do leave here saying, hey, I've got a bunch of new ideas. Right. And like on the pharmacy team, just a super quick story. I was in a performance group for, not necessarily executives, but kind of just a performance group with 10 other people from different industries. And we'd meet once a month. It was facilitated. I did that for a couple of years. And my team at NCPA would hate when I'd come back from one of those meetings. I mean, so it was once a month. They're like, oh man, was Doug at that meeting again? Because I'd come back with ideas from, again, these were not in the pharmacy community, but just things that these other companies were doing that could be applied towards our pharmacy community or towards my NCPA team. And so I think in hindsight, I wish I had brought one or two of them with me to some of these meetings. So it wasn't just me being the lone ranger coming in with these ideas and, upsetting their apple carts.
The cool part about that is you get to see that a little bit full circle too. When I first started at Pioneer, Jeff would go to these shows And I'd get emails from him at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Hey, I saw this. You need to go do this. And I caught myself last night. I was like, all right, I'm not going to send this email now. So I set it to schedule this morning to go send out, because I was like, oh, I have all these ideas. Like, you just can't, like, that's what you're looking for. Like, this is the innovation place, right? You're going to come and hear that stuff. It was really cool. Like, I have to go now look at some, what kind of performance though? Like, are you like, you were saying it was performance. So like, were you like acting, singing? Like what?
Oh, no.
Okay,
No,
I was like,
management performance, financial performance.
Okay, that makes way more sense.
No.
I'm trying to, my brain kind of caught up to me finally, and I was like, is Doug like into acting or, like, all right.
No.
That's the secret. We're gonna start a rumor that you're into like improv on the.
The closest I came is in high school. I was the host of our local high school cable news show.
Oh, okay.
And one claim to fame is that there's a celebrity on Food Network who I went to high school with, and she was my co-host that first year. So that's the closest awesome. I've come to.
Very cool. Yeah, I was not surprising for this. I've got a face for radio, but I was the curtain guy for plays, because there was zero likelihood that I was getting out there on stage and doing anything remotely artistic. So with the last couple of minutes, what do you have? Some words of advice for people to come to next year's NCPA?
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
Next year's NCPA meeting's in New Orleans.
Okay.
So we're going to be in New Orleans in 51 weeks. It's a week earlier than this year. Between now and then, we're going to be working and advocating for Congress to pass PBM payment reform. We have an election coming up in a few days, and so we'll see where things shake out after the election. We still believe Congress can, should, and hope that they will do their job to finish the fight for this congressional session, and then there's going to be another fight right after. I think most people know, but we want them to finish on Medicaid payment reform and get that first step, and also Medicare reform, Medicare reasonable and relevant contracts, as again that first step towards the transparency and predictability of a cost-plus model. On the Medicaid side, it's already passed the House of Representatives. It's passed out of committee in the Senate. And the Senate, all they need to do is bring it up for a vote, and we think it'll pass.
Oh, all they need to do, right?
Just bring it up for a vote. But it has passed the House already, which is a huge step.
Yeah, it's a big barrier these days.
The Medicare reform has come out of the Senate committees. It hasn't gone to the House yet, so it's got a little bit more to go. But those are the two. That was the short term. And then once the new Congress starts, we'll see there's going to be a new administration, no matter what candidate wins.
Right.
And so we'll see what that looks like and begin educating them or re-educating them on what community pharmacies need and recruiting our members. And just one quick thing, I think I'm really concerned about employers. I think employers overall are drinking the PBM Kool-Aid, and they're addicted to the rebates. And I think that's a big problem for reform, and we need to work with the employers to help educate them that those rebates may look attractive,
right?
But they're fool's gold.
Yeah,
and they're going to cost you more.
I'll give
in
you
the
a
long
50%
run.
rebate. I'll just charge you 100% more.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, hey, that $50 million looks good. You paid me $100 million to get 50 of it back.
Right. Yeah, it's completely insane, but no, I totally agree.
It's totally a shell game, but a lot of employers
they buy it.
Like those rebates.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're running out of time, so we'll go ahead and jump off. But I know you've got a million other things to do, so thank you for spending some time with us.
Yeah.
We always appreciate it. Always have fun.
Appreciate the invitation. Thanks, Josh.
Cool. Thanks, Doug.
Yep.